And then, as soon as the fight starts, hit them with your left hand, right? So, that's just faking somebody out. But intent. So for me, the one red line that I do have in life is anybody that messes around with a child. That's it. That's my red line in life. And I think that for all of us, because there are places in this country that are trying to change the definition of what a child is, right? We identify what an adult is. You're 18 years old. You can drink alcohol, I guess, in some states. I think maybe that's universal. You can certainly go into the military and give your life for this country at the age of 18. So that's why we have that delineation between, what's a child and what's an adult. And we need to have those rules. And there's some really dark, evil things out there. And partly what you'll hear tonight from the panel, and then tomorrow. And I would love to, even tomorrow, for folks when you go away from here tonight, if you have some friends, bring them back tomorrow. Bring them back tomorrow. These places ought to be packed. They ought to be packed, and they ought to be packed because this is an issue that is the number one problem in our country right now. This is the number one crime in our country today, is this issue that we're here to talk about, right? So the Pledge of Allegiance is a 31-word pledge. There are some in this country right now that are trying to have it removed. Some call it a form of idolatry. Seriously. It was, you can go back and look at the beginnings of it, when it was created or when it was first written, and it goes back to the 1800s, late 1800s, and it was actually written as a pledge post-Civil War to renew the idea of patriotism and to unify. There's all kinds of stories about it, but it was really meant because the nation was still in the throes of post-Civil War, and things were still, they weren't great. We were sort of reviving as a nation after literally almost destroying ourselves, after 4 years of incredible just warfare. And so that was one of Benjamin Harrison was the president at the time, and he was trying to revive the idea of patriotism, and this pledge came out. It's got different versions of it. And the most fascinating thing to me is that as we fast forwarded, because it was one nation indivisible, okay? It was always one nation indivisible. And in 1954, via an act of Congress, they added the words under God. Okay, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all, right? So under God. The people that we are up against these days, they hate that. So the Supreme Court, it was like during the World War II. This was before under God was added. So, I think it was 1943, a justice on the Supreme Court said that, the decision, because it was a case came to the Supreme Court that said, hey, they're trying to basically, kind of like the movie, they're trying to use the pledge to get these people to be nationalists, right? Remember 1943, height of World War II, you got the Nazi Party, Nazism, Nazi socialism, okay, Nazi socialism, and then imperialism over in the Pacific. So they were trying to say that this thing is bad, this pledge is bad, that what it's doing is it's going to cause this rise of nationalism. And, the idea really is to say, look, I pledge allegiance to the flag, right? And it's an idea to say to us as a nation that this is a way to unify. And I kind of talk about this maybe yesterday a little bit with some other folks when we were here last night, that the pledge is a way for us to come together, and particularly with children. 47 states still in this country still allow the Pledge of Allegiance to be said in public schools, but not every public school allows it. So 47 nations is still okay to say it. That means that states, There's 3 states that don't. And it's going to be attacked very hard here over these next, this next year or so. So what I want people to understand is that the pledge is exactly what it is. It's a pledge, but it's really a pledge to something that's much greater than ourselves. And I love the fact that they added under God. Because when they added under God, and it was an act of Congress that did that, they did it because they knew, and they, like we've always believed, and it is true, that this nation was built on a set of Judeo-Christian principles and values. That's the way it is, folks. In the Declaration of Independence, they use the word creator and they use the word Lord. Creator 4 times and Lord once. Most people don't know that, okay? All right, so what I want you to do is I want you to all stand up and make sure that you don't have your phones on, and take your hats off and place your hand over your heart, and we're going to just say the Pledge of Allegiance together, okay? Go ahead.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
See, that wasn't so hard. All right, everybody. I'm going to bring Boone back up here, and you guys are going to be blown away by the team that we have brought in here, and they'll all introduce themselves. So, Boone, here you go, brother.
Ladies and gentlemen, General Flynn, what a treat that is. The Pledge of Allegiance with General Flynn. Let's recap real quick. You guys are at America's Futures event. This is the Washington State Summit. And there are some very amazing people involved with America's future. We want to show them, acknowledge them to you, and tell you a little bit about America's future. Drop the lights, play the video.
The decision to get in the fight changed my life because I realized that my pain was an opportunity for others to gain healing, others to be able to not be silent anymore.
As I researched, that burden grew more and more. I knew I had to do something. I had to do more. That's what really got me involved in working to expose child sexual exploitation and trafficking, and doing whatever I could to help these children.
The first step for people to get involved in the fight is to actually acknowledge that there is a problem and to realize that they are part of the solution.
One of the best and simplest ways to get into the fight is to educate and to expose.
Develop not just a burden, but develop a purpose or a mission, a motivation. What is it that drives you to help kids?
I have had so many people come up to me, including a lot of survivors, and thanking me for what I have done. And they've also told me that what I did has also either inspired them to expose this truth or get involved on a local level.
What keeps me going is thinking about the children, the child victims who are trafficked and have no hope. They have no parents a lot of times, or their parents neglected them, sold them. They have no voice, and many of them don't make it. I knew that I had to be that voice, and you can be that voice.
When you look in the mirror and you decide that, okay, I'm going to be accountable, and you take a step forward, that's the first step.
And I think if you develop that passion, that motivation, and you show yourself willing to do something, God's going to give you the opportunity and make that clear what that's going to be. And there's plenty that needs to be done.
Outstanding, outstanding. Wonderful video. And now I have the distinct pleasure and honor of introducing one of my favorite people and a very, very strong heavy hitter within our family of America's future. She started in journalism in 1988. She must have been like 2, obviously. She is deployed all around the world to more places than more warfighters than I know, and she's brought the most hard-hitting journalism that I have ever seen. Mike said she's one of the best journalists in the world. I think she is definitely one of the best journalists in the world. She's a wonderful American. You can see her on her show, Lara, Logan, the rest of the story, and we're going to watch a quick video about Lara right now.
there is nothing left. Any direction you walk, all you find is more destruction. Thousands of angry Somalis and heavily armed gunmen were locked in an intense battle with the Americans. We were caught in an ambush with his troops along the frontier. So it was a policy of total annihilation.
Do you think they will attack you before you attack them?
How many shipwrecks do you think are down there? You've been described as the greatest American rock band. Is that how you feel?
Are you among the last people on Earth to speak this language?
And if you look at the U.S., what are you most worried about here? This is traditional Yakuza turf. They run everything here, from the girls to the sex to the drugs.
Do you care if the species goes extinct? Does that mean anything to you?
Why do you want to kill them?
Derek and Beverly took us deep into the Delta to see the lions.
What is it like to be charged by a lion? Is that what a mother chimp would do?
No.
Only Mama Jane.
Coney rules by fear and claims he has mystical powers, a formidable combination in the minds of the children he kidnaps.
You were part of an army that taught children to kill, where young girls were raped.
All these people were doing atrocities. Do it under conscious instruction.
Including you.
Yes.
The most obvious thing when you look at these walls is that it's all men. Up there is the past directives. And you went from 0 to prime minister in about 8 years. So were you high? Were you using it?
Oh yeah, I was.
And that's why you felt
But the bed would be right there in the middle.
Yeah. And you'd all sleep in one bed?
We'd all sleep in one bed.
Happy memories?
The best.
What happened to a lot of the other kids that were on the streets with you?
Well, unfortunately, a lot of my friends are either dead or in jail.
What kind of soldier are you?
I'm average. I'm mediocre.
This is the single greatest honor that the military can bestow on its own. And it comes right from the President of the United States himself. That's pretty good for a mediocre soldier.
Think how good the great soldiers are.
And here she is with us with her 1-hour host presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, Lara Logan.
Thank you, Bill.
Good evening, everybody. Pastor Matt, where are you? I just want to say thank you so much for hosting us in your church, in your home. I know your mom is sitting back there proudly watching. It takes a lot of courage, obviously, to stand, and without people like yourselves in our communities, we stand alone. And when you stand alone, it's very easy to cut you down. And so I just want to say thank you so much for letting us come into your home and to spend an evening with you. And if you come tomorrow, then it's even longer. So I want to cut right to it because you've been very patient. You've sat through a movie already and lots of talking. And you have a unique opportunity in this moment. America's future under Mary Flynn's leadership, and of course with General Flynn, is working really hard to do something very significant. And to do that, we have to find the right people. And you are all the right people. You know, I would like to ask the panel, Tara, Aaron, if you could come up here, please. Sorry, I'm being indicated that I'm not speaking into the mic. Tara Rodas, please come up here. Heidi Chibata, well, I got some lessons in how to say that back there. Aaron Stevenson, and of course, Tina Boz's wife. You're going to hear from Boz in a little bit. So, okay, please take a seat. Just feel comfortable. So, the great thing about what you're going to hear this evening is that if you've looked in the media, if you saw that Tara was a whistleblower for, well, she's been in the Inspector General's office for a very, very long time. I won't tell you how long because, don't want to show you how old she is, but she's been there a long time. And she is one of the, probably the only whistleblower that I know that kept her job, right? Because she's so well respected. The agency that she works for, which is the highest office of government accountability in the land, has not let her go. They're standing by her. That's how bad it is. So how did she get to bring us her story? How did she get to blow the whistle and keep her job? She volunteered for the Biden administration when they were sending out an all call across the government, asking for people to step forward because of the issues at the border, which, by the way, they were still saying wasn't an issue. We need people to help us with the crisis. That's not a crisis. And so what's really amazing about Tara's story tonight, that this has not really happened before, right? Okay, so Aaron Stevenson, Aaron is a former Marine who was in intelligence for the U.S. Marine Corps, who also has worked in, he worked as a contractor for a couple of years, also still in intelligence, and then into the Department of Homeland Security, and then into U.S. CIS, U.S. Customs and Immigration. I used to live in fear of them because I'm an immigrant, right? But I'm a citizen now, I'm okay. And they have quite a unique story, because I'll tell you something, one of the loneliest things you can be in the United States of America today is a whistleblower. Because we all want them to stand up, right? We want the FBI agent that says, no, I'm not going to go and arrest a January 6th person for exercising their First Amendment rights. But when they do, what do we do for them? That's right, nothing. That silence is deafening. We do nothing. Okay, so there's Tarek Johnson from Capitol Police. There's people like Aaron from Department of Homeland Security. These people, when they stand up, they need every single one of us to stand by them. Otherwise, more people won't keep standing up. So, and they have a unique story, which you're going to hear more about this evening. But Tara was working on one side of this government the trafficking of kids at the border. And Aaron was working in the Department of Homeland Security as an intelligence analyst, specifically with the watch list on transnational criminal organizations. And he had another piece of that same puzzle. And their story of how they came together has really never been told by the two of them. So that's fascinating. Tina is one of my most favorite people in the world. She's like an angel that fell out of the sky. I cannot imagine what it would be like to be in the hands of traffickers, to be living through unimaginable minute by minute terror that none of us can really imagine. And then this woman and her husband Boz come through that door. And we all know, if it was my baby, if it was me, if it was if it was your grandchild, right? You pray for a Tina and a Boz. She also happens to be an attorney and gorgeous, and I can say that. I'm a woman, I don't care. And has beautiful children and has an extraordinary story of her own. But when you think about more than, somewhere around 50% of the people involved in counter-trafficking are trafficking kids. So finding the right people who are doing this job honestly is a big, big deal. And we spend a lot of time at America's Future in finding the right people. Heidi, gosh, imagine if I pulled everything down, that would be quite possible. Heidi Ciabatta she's done something pretty extraordinary. She's been able to handle this conversation for 3 decades, working with missing and exploited children, abused children, in a law enforcement capacity at an investigative level, working with victims. She's going to give you some hard truths tonight about how all of us are failing as parents and grandparents. Because if your child or your grandchild has a phone or an iPad or a Chromebook or whatever it is, or all of them, they are already in touch with a child trafficker. They are already being groomed. You can absolutely count on that. And I can tell you, preparing for this, I'm no I'm no exception. I had my own guilt about my own kids, right? And knowing what they're doing online and trusting in the schools, that's not going to work. That's not going to protect them. So we're going to hear a lot more from Heidi on what we can do there. I'm probably taking too long with my introduction. So let's begin our conversation with Aaron, okay? Because you were the first one to come out on this issue. So can you tell us a little bit about, you're sitting there in customs, you started there in 2014 until 2023. Did they fire you? I don't know. Is it? You have to test.
Can you guys hear me? Okay.
Okay, so you were working with transnational criminal organizations. There's a watch list. For some inexplicable reason, it has a 40,000 person cap on it. And you noticed something unusual. What was it?
All right, so this watch list started in like 2015, so this is not new. It's February 2021. And there's about, give or take, 20 of these encounters a day. Okay, so it's like you see them quite a bit. And then
what do you mean encounters?
So the encounters, and they come across via an email, and it says like, hey, here's Juan Carlos, he's flying in the country. Here's another guy, he's getting deported. Here's a guy that got arrested. That's what you see day in, day out, 20 a day.
And they're on this watch list because they're a member of a transnational criminal organization, such as?
Well, for example, the two that Trump put on in 2017 was MS-13, 18th Street Gang, Sinaloa Cartel, bad guys that cross our border that are right there.
The worst guys.
The worst of the worst. So, one comes across, and the code just says, 6 USC 279 UAC sponsor. Okay, whatever. I have no idea what that is. I'm busy, whatever. I see another one a month later, in March 2021. Same code, 6 USC 279 UAC sponsor. I'm like, what is that? So like everybody else, I just copy paste, I Google it. And it comes back to this program of, wow, it looks like there's this thing called Unaccompanied Alien Children, UAC, and they get sponsored by, people, right? I'm like, okay, well, the guy I'm looking at is MS-13. So I just, I said it out loud, I'm like, well, why would an MS-13 member be trying to get a kid? Then you say it out loud and you hear it and you're like, why would an MS-13 member be trying to get a child? And then very quickly it's like, okay, what was it? I saw before. So I took that code and I searched in my inbox, and I've got every single record going back to 2015, and there's only two. One from February 2021 and the one there in March 2021. And so it's like, okay, that's odd. That whatever that is. Well, then April I see a third one. And then I look up all these aliens online and look at the records because we have all the information. We know who these guys are.
You went through 32,000 records.
So the watch, I'm going to nerd out now. So the watch list is capped at 40,000, right? By the U.S. government. That's a horrible idea. But at the time, there was around 32,000, give or take. And I tried asking around hey, who's got an automated process that can just quickly go through, tell me who, isn't whatever, right? And everyone said no. Okay, I'm kind of stubborn. So I copy and paste 32,000 of these alien numbers to find out who these people are. And again, I only find these people. But the key part here is, again, this has never happened before. We've never seen an alien on the top watch list trying to get a child. And now I've seen one from El Salvador, one from Romania, and one from Honduras. And they were an 18th Street Gang, MS-13, and a Romanian crime group. It's 3 different gangs from 3 different countries, and they've never done this before. So that to me, I was like, okay, there's about 250,000 crossings per month. There's 40,000 on the watch list. Everyone's doing it apparently. This must be a big deal. This is something, I don't know what it is, but it ain't good. And I kind of kept looking into it. And then again, in May, I see another one. And by that point in time, I've already reached out to Project Veritas. I'm working with this journalist, trying to get more on it. And we keep seeing one every 3.5 weeks. And I finally sat down to the interview with James O'Keefe. That was in July 2021. And then before they even released it, an 8th guy popped on the watch list. Or sorry, a 9th guy popped on the watch list. So I had to update it. I'm like, hey, I know you guys have already done this thing, but before you publish it, you got to update it. There's one more dude.
But why didn't you just go to your bosses?
I did. So the first thing I did was go to my first boss, and then, I don't know, it's not our job. Go to my second boss, we don't deal with UACs. We don't deal with these kids. It's not our job. Okay, fine. So I reached out to the rest of USCIS, and it's true. It's not something that USCIS does. Okay, fine. But CBP does. Sorry.
It's Customs and Border Protection,
Customs
the
Border-
agency that oversees Border Patrol, the office, the ports, everything.
Yep. So I got friends there. I'm calling up the intel guys. I'm calling up Border Patrol, same thing. I'm reaching out to like every layer of DHS that has this, including DHS Intelligence and Analysis, the intel guys at DHS. Not that, I don't know, it's not our job. And now I'm reaching out to the rest of the TOC working group, so like DOJ, FBI, State Department, Labor, whoever touches this program, like you guys are tracking this, right? Like someone sees what's going on, right? And it was no across the board. It wasn't just no, it was like, oh, it's not us, I don't know. And so by that point in time where it's like, okay, I can either, no offense, go to OIG, I can go to OIG.
You can go to where Tara worked. You didn't think that was going to be worth the time or trouble.
Well, I mean, just logically thinking about it, and again, no offense, I didn't know Tara at the time, but logically thinking about it, I could give them all this information, they could take 6 months to write a report, telling them what I just told them, and then like nothing really gets done. Or I could go to the media and basically throw a flag in the air. And it's like, obviously, you people need to know this. So it's like, okay, America needs to know about this, but it's also like, there's good people out there. Like, somebody has to be seeing this. And thankfully, there's a really good person out there who's in Pomona, California, who knew. That's Tara.
But Aaron, just explain to us, I mean, I get these are bad guys with criminal records, and they want to sponsor a child. So how do you know that's not their child? I mean, because remember, the American public, right? We're told unaccompanied minors are coming to the United States. They're allowed into the country because they're reuniting with their families who are here illegally. And so this is meant to be a good thing.
So again, I'm looking at the problem and a bit of a hammer, so I see a bunch of nails, right? And I'm seeing these guys on the watch list. And if I had the pictures, I'd show you, but they're tatted up, 25 years old, applying to the U.S. government as an MS-13 member, trying to get a child. The whole thing just stunk to me. Now, Tara can actually get into this as far as how the process actually works, because that is the sinister part of, like, oh, it's not that they're just trying to get a kid. Turns out that guy I'm looking at's already been selected to receive children.
Multiple children. Okay, so Tara is married to a man from El Salvador. She speaks fluent Spanish. The old emergency call goes out across the federal government. We need help. You volunteer. You think you're going to be reading bedtime stories and putting kids to bed. That's not what happened.
No, that's not what happened at all. I'm sadly to say, because it was a terrible shock to see children that I expected to be happy, that they were going to be reunited with their families. And instead, I'm seeing children in crisis. You know, children are having panic attacks. Children had to be put on suicide watch. I've heard children screaming for their parents. And as I'm talking with the case managers, and they're like, you know, the kids, the stories they're telling me, they don't match what the sponsor is saying. I'm like, what do you mean they don't match what the sponsor's saying? And we come to find out, and it's just stunning to me because it's been happening for a decade now, we know, in this program, is that one of the things that they didn't tell us was, oh yeah, by the way, they do traffic children through this program. So they make an all call to all federal employees to come to help with the crisis with the children and don't tell us that, by the way, there are bad people trying to get the kids. And it was just shocking to find out that children in the end were going to bad people. So we begin reporting, we're talking about, hey, this person is trying to get, you know, like 2, 3 children. Oh, and by the way, there's other people living in the same house that are also sponsoring 2 and 3 children. Oh, there's an apartment building that's got 40. There's another apartment building that has 30. Oh, there's this block, like in this one particular area, like a 3 square mile has over 300 children. That is not statistically probable. And so we're trying to raise the flag and tell everybody all of these things. I myself put in more than 20 cases of suspected trafficking. And I just started right in June of reporting. And I see in August his disclosure. Miraculously, by the hand of God, he put Aaron to see and throw that flag. And miraculously, the story gets to me and the team. And I will never forget the moment of watching him say and show pictures of gang members who were sponsoring these children that I'm seeing in front of me in crisis. These children, many of them from Guatemala, you may know that the Guatemalan government is now calling on the U.S. to investigate what's happening with their children because they're receiving all these criminal reports. And people say, well, why Guatemala? What many people don't know is that a lot of the Guatemalan children cannot speak Spanish. They speak Mayan dialects that we had to have translators on the site. As a Spanish speaker, I've sat in and listened and cannot understand one word. It sounds more like Arabic than Spanish. And I see these little children who are vulnerable and they're in crisis. And then I find out they're going to gang members that the United States intelligence apparatus knows that we have these bad level criminal actors here, and HHS with billions of dollars knows that kids have been trafficked for a decade and they don't tell us. It is stunning to me. It's the most horrible thing I've ever witnessed. And we need you to be the voice for the children. Your voice makes a difference. We need people to stand up. These children need help.
So to put it in context, do you all remember 2014, 2015 under Obama, the unaccompanied minor crisis at the border? I don't know about you, but I was kind of like, what the hell? Why are there suddenly thousands of kids unaccompanied at the border? What is this? Where did this come from? That's when the unaccompanied minor children aliens program, right, UAC program was started. And what's fascinating is right as Biden was being inaugurated, they were already publishing rule changes to that program to strip away all of the vetting and the checks and balances that were built into that system. And one of the things you pointed out, Aaron, maybe you could explain this, is that it was 3 different regions of the world. It was 3 different transnational criminal organizations. But also, it all began the month that Joe Biden took office.
So I was there from like day one of the watch list, like the first record that came across, right? And these records are literally just you name it, and then we look at it. So again, if an alien is flying in the country on this watch list, we see that. If this guy gets a DUI and goes to jail, we see that. If he's getting released from prison, we see that. If he goes to USCIS for an immigration benefit, we see that. 5 years, never seen one encounter that says, trying to sponsor an unaccompanied child. And then February, I think it was 14th, 2021, you see it. And then in March, then in April, and blah, 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 right? But this is the key part though. Like, I'm not sure if you guys know about gangs or not, but they typically don't want to share profits. They typically don't want to share resources because they want to corner the market. Yet, all of a sudden, you've got a dude from Romania, a guy from Honduras, a lady from El Salvador, MS-13, 18th Street Gang, a Balkan group, and they're all, they all know where to go and how to do it. And it's like, something stinks. Like, something smells really bad. I don't know what it is, and I'm looking into it, but that's the mindset, again, in early 2021, and it was right away. It was all of a sudden right away.
And you feel it was organized. Can you explain why?
Oh, yeah. Well, again, they don't share resources, everything else, but when you actually look at the cartels, the cartels in Mexico specifically, so you got the Gulf Cartel Syndicate, you got the Sinaloa Cartel, you got just all those gangs, right? It's not haphazard the Wild West. There are lines in the sand of where they operate. You guys are from here to here. There might be some gun battles to get some more territory back and forth, but these are areas of operations. So we know it's organized down there, and now we're seeing all of a sudden, we know where these gangs are at inside the country and where these kids are going. And it turns out, which I didn't know at the time, there's all these NGOs that are in the process, which are really greasing the gears to make this very, very efficient. And it's okay, hold on. There's no crisis at the border. Remember, that was the narrative. There's no crisis at the border. And all these kids are just kind of flying in really quickly with how long are they inside of HHS custody?
The goal was to move the children in 10 to 14 days. 10 to 14 days. Never seeing the sponsor. Never seeing the home where the child is going. So I mean, you just have to ask yourself, does that make sense? Does that make sense?
And everybody knows that the numbers of people crossing illegally has skyrocketed. So what normally happens when supply goes up? What normally happens to the price?
Supply goes up, price goes down, right? Well, when you look at the crossing rates from 2014 to 2019 to cross the border, you got to pay the cartel. Like, they control the territory, like we said, costs some money. I don't know how much it was exactly, but it was somewhere like high hundreds, low thousands. And then 2020, the COVID restrictions, Title 42, those things just drop off, right? 2021, Biden administration completely opens the border and is facilitating this process, making it even easier, actually, and the supply skyrockets. Like, we're going to get 250,000 crossings a month. But the price to come across jumps even beyond that. It goes to 5,000, 8,000, 9,000. It's not matching inflation. It's going above and beyond. And somebody's making money off this thing. They're obviously paying. They're increasing the cost because there's got to be something else down there controlling it. I don't think the cartel is doing it by themselves. And this is an Aaron Stevenson moment. May I? This is me speaking. This is nobody else. But we know that American government has, they've brought in crack, they've brought in drugs, they've funneled that in the country. They've done that with guns. Is trafficking people just below them? We would never do that. It's okay. This makes me go there's something still out there which is definitely we don't understand yet. And that's what we're trying to do, obviously, is to figure the whole thing out to destroy the system. But it's definitely it's a very well-oiled machine. So.
Heidi, one of your areas of specialty is regarding the internet and technology and the role that has played in trafficking. When you and I talked, you painted such a memorable, important picture for me of a child, someone who is seeking child pornography, having to go to the mailbox and reach out. Can you demonstrate for everybody how, from when you began, when the internet was just starting, to now, how technology has transformed the space of child pornography, child exploitation, child abuse?
Back in the day, I didn't do child sex abuse for 30 years. I did it for more than 10, but even when I was back as a new deputy sheriff, in order to obtain child pornography, the person that was looking for it would have to find the black market and find the person that they could subscribe and they can get it mailed to them. And we used to get, occasionally you would get something through the U.S. Postal Service that they're using the mail to obtain child pornography. Well, now everything is all done by phone. When I first started doing these investigations, we always went into the house and took their computers. Now, you take their desktop or laptop, but you always take their phone because it's always right there. It's in their hand. They have it wherever they go. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children released their numbers just last week for 2023, and they have received, and the National Center they're the agency that is responsible for the reporting. Everybody reports to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children for child pornography. Suspected child pornography. Last year, they received it was 39 million referrals. The majority of them come from internet or electronic service providers. Could be your email, Yahoo, Google, Meta, Facebook, Instagram, any of the social networking apps, all of that. And of the 39 million that came in, they have different categories that they have child pornography. They now refer to it as child sexual abuse material because that's really what it is. It's not, when you think of pornography, you think of consenting adults engaging in this activity for a profit. Well, that's not what this is. This is the images of little children being raped repeatedly. It's not just some little girl standing, like the old Coppertone at commercials where they're pulling down her bathing suit. That's not what it is. It's full-on sexual assault of children. But of the 39 million, I think it was roughly 28 million of them were CSAM images. that people were finding online. And there's not enough law enforcement in the country. And the United States is the biggest consumer of child sexual abuse material in the world. And there's not enough police officers and investigators at the state or federal level to investigate all of these.
Tell them how many there are. How many investigators actually are there?
I don't know the numbers, but it's in the low thousands. That's nationwide.
So, and how many police departments have no one?
There's so many that don't have anybody that's even assigned full time to do this kind of work. Where I came from, I was blessed. We started off with a task force, started it brand new, and over the years we had a wonderful sheriff and a wonderful district attorney and a wonderful bureau and the chief of the Bureau of Investigations who really built up a robust team. And they're still only getting about 10% of the referrals that they receive, they're able to investigate. It's just sticking their finger in the hole, hoping that the dike doesn't blow. But there's a lot of agencies across the country that doesn't have anybody assigned to investigate those cases. Los Angeles Police Department, what is the second largest law enforcement agency in the country? They have 4.
4 people investigating crimes against children.
4.
4 people.
Investigating internet crimes. They have a very robust sexual assault child abuse unit. But dealing with the CSAM, and we know from studies.
By CSAM you mean?
Child sexual assault material. And we know that they've done studies. The low estimate is 50%. The more accurate is up in the 80% of people who collect and view child sexual abuse material are hands-on offenders. So, and this is one of those things that doesn't get talked about. Kids don't talk about it. They don't tell their parents until much, much later, usually in life, if at all.
And what has happened over the time that you've been working on this with the ages of the victims?
When we first started, it's funny that I learned about the hormones that they were pouring into our food, because we have to look at the images and try to age the child. And when I first started, we were trying to figure out if they're 14, 15, 16-year-olds. And now that's old, it's all newborn, infant, toddler.
And the problem with, newborns, apart from the obvious, is that they can't talk.
Newborns can't report it. A lot of toddlers, they don't know how to tell. And to be quite honest, a lot of parents don't listen, they don't pay attention, or they'll choose their abuser over their child. In all the cases I did, I've had one mother, in the hundreds of cases, one mother who stood up for her child and divorced. Actually, she was wonderful. She kept him on the hook until we could get involved. She let us wire her up and record his full confession, blaming the 3-year-old that solicited him. And then she testified in court. But and it's sad. It's the one mom I can remember.
Tina. There's not a lot of people that can say that yesterday, how many girls did you rescue?
Well, this week it's been 4, and it's been a busy week.
And rescuing a child obviously is not a simple task.
No, and it can be very complicated when the child, 2 of these girls were runaways, running from situations they didn't want to be in, running because of trauma, running because of their fight flight, and they didn't want to be found because they knew they were going to be put in lockdown, which is what happens to kids who are constant runners. but without people there to unwind the trauma, right? Why is the kid running? And if you take our course, we talk about this. Like, if you have a kid that's running and you just keep building higher fences, you're going to get a better jumper. They're going to adapt to everything you try to do. And 2 of these girls were those. They attacked law enforcement, you know, when the law enforcement would try to intervene for them. So this gets very complicated because one of these girls was playing tricks on us. She was in communication. But she knew that if we got her, that she would go to juvenile hall because there was already like a warrant for her. So, I mean, she is in juvenile hall. But the deal was we worked with the parents and we work with Safe House Project. And I realized that the girl doesn't want to come back because she doesn't want to go to juvenile hall. And she's going to meet a bunch of criminals in there and her life's going to get worse. So we worked for a week to find options. And now she has options of places to go, places she wants to go. And so that's the deal.
So if you're out there and you're wondering, you know, what you can do, I mean, one of those things is you can help provide options, right? By volunteering, there's a lot of different ways that you can do that by supporting with your time or with your whatever resources that you have. But finding places for girls and for kids to go is a big part of the problem, right?
Huge. And the emergency, look, the emergency program, and we were just talking about your church is involved in a great degree. Better than any church I've actually been at in helping kids out of trafficking. Honestly, it's amazing. The emergency, what to do with them right now when they're recovered, that is a huge vacancy. And we have safe houses where we're able to place them but we have to be rid of them within 72 hours pretty much because there are legal parameters for having a kid, you know, and you have to fit inside those. So the emergency placement is very, very hard to find.
So you and Boz are kind of unique in a sense because you're not reading things on the internet. You're not reading some article written about trafficking. Boz and I have known each other for a very long time, and I think going on 20 years, and he's been rescuing kids since the early 90s. You've been working with him at Association for Recovery of Children for a long time, and what you deal with on a daily basis is really unimaginable for most people. And I know I ask you about this case all the time because I still just can't get beyond it, but I don't want to say her name, but tell us the story of this one girl who you saved.
Yeah, so I'm going to call her Nikki, and this is an active case, and you're going to be really frustrated. I'm going to ask you to brace yourselves, okay? Because you'll be where we are, which is unimaginable. Unimaginable all the way through, unimaginable now. And I'll tell you the story without elaboration. It's actually a toned down. You've heard some of the real story. So this is going to be a toned down version for you all. But so Nikki, the youngest of 6 children in a family, her mom gets cancer. The family can't afford the medical bills. The dad, who we've done all the research on this case, who's already involved with some shady people, sells her to a child pornographer for the money to pay for the mom's surgery to save her life. Now, Nikki knows this. So when I meet her, all of this is coming through her telling me. And she says, I said, are you angry at your parents? Did your parents do anything wrong? No, I saved my mother's life. I saved my mother's life. She sees herself as doing something noble. She's sold to a child pornographer at 7 years old. 7. This child pornographer keeps children from 7 to 9 years old, and he films them all day, every day for pornography. They're kept in closets in the dark. They're beaten. He sells them to private owners, if they're private owners that are interested in a child sex toy. So she gets sold after that to another private owner. And keep in mind, she's 9 years old, okay? So this private owner buys 3 of the children, a boy and her and another girl that was younger. The little boy winds up getting sold to somebody else. Now, the little boy she was super attached to, we tried to find this little boy because it was one of the things that I was trying to keep her from going back to the trafficker. And I said, what if we can find him? And we weren't able to find him. Anyway, this is the story of these kids' lives. So she gets sold to a private owner. At the age of 12, they're able to start working motels, being sold as sex objects, as child prostitutes in motels. So she describes years of being taken at night to motels with a bunch of other kids. Now, here are all of us. We go to motels. We stay in motels on road trips, and you're seeing a couple of adults with a bunch of kids going in. And what do you think? You think it's a field trip. You think it's a couple families getting together. You're not alerting to what is wrong with this, and hopefully you will after hearing this story. So here's what was interesting. I'm going to back up. I asked her how was she treated by this slave owner. They wore burlap bags. These children that were his slaves wore burlap bags every day. And she goes, it was itchy. My skin itched. They had nothing but burlap bags. And that was how they treated. Now, her back is completely scarred up from the beatings that she endured. But the boy got worse. The boy was beaten way harder because he was a boy. So after being in the motel circuit for a while, she gets sold. She's beautiful. She's beautiful. At 13, she gets sold to a mob assassin, who is an assassin for a crime ring, organized crime. And this is where it gets wild. She's 13 years old, and he kills people. He's fighting with a man in front of her, trying to kill this man, and the man is fighting back. This is her first encounter with this, jumps in to try to save the man that he's trying to kill. And in the process of jumping into the fight, distracts that man, and the assassin kills him and says, well, you're a good little assassin, girl. You killed this man. So she at 13, now in your 13-year-old mind, she blames herself. And he goes, good, you're good at this. He trains her to be an assassin. Now I'm skipping way forward. We're talking scientific.
Razor blades in her, false nails,
okay.
right? That kind of
Scientifically trains her to be an assassin. He has a trainer come where they have basically dummies where you can see all the arteries and the veins in the body. And he trains her what arteries to cut, how to kill the person. She would use a garrote that was basically a bracelet around her arm that turned into a strangulation tool. And a garrote, thank you. And she had fake fingernails that were razor blades. I mean, it was all these things. And he nicknamed her Dagger. That was her name. And he tattooed a dagger on her shoulder. This is your dagger. She killed 64 people. Now, here, and you're like, why? Why wouldn't she? Well, yes, she did resist, and here's what would happen. If she had compassion and didn't kill the person or tried to help them, he would come in, he would give her a certain amount of time, and if she didn't kill the person, he would come in and torture the person to death and blame her the entire time for causing this. You could have killed them nicely. You would have done a really nice job. I know you would have been nice to them. But now you and I are going to slowly kill this person, and it's your fault. He would have these parties at his house. They had a mansion, they had boats, they had yachts, and he would have the parties, and at the party he would invite the target. The target would have a date with her because everybody knew she was a child prostitute. So that's how he was setting these up time after time. There was one particular man that she had compassion on, and he was very upset that she defied him and didn't kill this person. So he chained her to a bed with her legs spread. He cut off the man's head and put his head in her lap. Now she can't get away. She's chained by her neck and her legs. And he says, you're going to peel the man's flesh off of his face. And you're going to sit here until you do it. 3 days. 3 days, she wouldn't do it. But then she thought she was going to die, you know, and she did what he said. So when you talk about, she's 13. So you talk about how do you deal with this in your head? So she became more cooperative after that. At some point, she killed a very important person who was an executive of a bank, a New York bank, and was well known. This person's brother was determined to find the killer. So it was actually a female banker. So the brother for years was trying to get vengeance on the murderer of his sister and closed in on this assassin. So he's able to get into the house and pulls a gun and confronts her owner, her master, and says, "You killed my sister." And he goes, "No, she did." Now the brother, he's been hunting the assassin. He doesn't know what to do because it's this little 14-year-old girl. And he blows away the assassin, the mob assassin. Then he looks at her and she thinks she's next, you know, and he can't kill her. He just can't bring himself to. So he takes her and he puts her and chains her in a back house behind his house. She doesn't see the light of day for 2 years. And she's raped all day long by people that he sends back because he wants to punish her. And occasionally he'll come in the room and he grabs her hands and he says, these hands killed my sister. And every time he comes in, she thinks, now he's going to kill me. He's going to kill me and put me out of my misery. But he doesn't. He slams the door and he goes back. And for 2 years, she's marking the days in blood, in her own blood on the wall. She tried to die. She tried to starve herself. And they would come in and force feed her. They would force water down her throat. So eventually the guy decides to get rid of her and he sells her to an auctioneer. Now I'm like, hold on, Nikki. Where are you? Well, we're in a state in the United States.
Texas.
Yeah, let's say it's Texas. It wasn't Texas.
Maybe Texas.
And I'm like, hang on. What do you mean an auction? She goes, a slave auction. She goes, so they blindfolded me and they stuck me in a bus. Now I'm trying to find the place, right? Of course, I'm asking all these questions. How long were you in the bus? How many left turns? How many right turns? I don't know. It's like, so she gets chained by the neck with other children in a storage unit. And the chain is going to a pipe in the roof from her neck and down her back, and her hands are chained behind her back. She said the chain was so short they couldn't lay down. So they would try to lean on each other to sleep. Then one by one, they're taken to the auction. Now I'm just like, what do you mean? Describe the auction. She goes, stage lights, blinding, hundreds of people. And I'm put on the stage and I stand there naked and people have these pads and they're bidding on these pads. So think about this. There's a venue. There's a venue selling children who are chained and naked, being paraded on a stage with stage lights, people with technology. And I was like, okay, so what happens then? Well, she goes, I don't know. They took me off stage and they put me in a cage to wait for my buyer to exchange paperwork. There's paperwork. So think about this. There's management running the venue. There's security. There are people that are paying tickets to get there. Think about all the mechanisms in place to have a slave auction of children. She's also tattooed with an alphanumeric tattoo on her arm that stands for white female for sex or labor. And then she had a 4-digit ID code. This is tattooed on her arm, and she has a tracking chip put in her arm. Her owner gets the device that goes with the tracker that's in her arm. So she called him stupid old fat guy that bought her. She's like, he was a stupid old fat guy. He bought me. So he takes her home, chains her by the neck to his bed. There she stays. She found a letter opener in the drawer. So when he comes back, he goes to bed. She jumps on top of him with the letter opener and says, unchain me or I'm going to stab you. And she would have. Okay, and he knows that. So he unlocks her. She cuts the tracking chip out of her arm with a letter opener. So she's bleeding, she's naked, she runs through the woods, goes toward a light, and it's a gas station. The gas station, naked girl bleeding, calls the hospital, calls the ambulance, calls the cops. They take her to the hospital. She's lying about her, but they finally identify her, and they call her parents. Her parents hadn't seen her since they sold her. Her parents come to the hospital to claim her. Now, they felt really bad. Okay, they take her home and they're like, I think we have to help her. Now, her siblings are there. Her brother, who still to this day doesn't believe any of her stories. I don't think he can deal with it. But he's like, okay, we're going to help her. Whatever happened to her, we're going to help her. She decides to get well and go to church. So there's a mega church with over 20,000 members. And she's like, I'm gonna go to church. I believe in God. She gets to know the high school, the youth minister, the youth pastor. And wouldn't you know, there's a really nice female youth minister. She gets to know that this woman takes her on, and she's beautiful and lovely and sweet. And she has sleepovers at her house for teenage girls from the youth group. And so Nikki, of course, goes to one of these sleepovers, and she's the only one there. And so she's like, well, I guess none of the other girls showed up. So the youth leader says, oh, don't worry about it. No one else could make it. Why don't you just go in the room there in the back and change into your jammies? Like, I'm going to make some popcorn and we'll watch movies. So she goes in the other room, in the bedroom, and the bolt on the outside of the door slides closed. Well, she realizes she's locked in. She thinks it's a mistake. She's banging on the door. Hey, you locked me in. Ha, ha, ha. Like, this is funny. And then she realizes after 20 minutes, she's really trapped. She goes to the window. There are bars on the window. Now, this is like not a bad neighborhood. This is out in the woods. So there are bars on the window. She realizes now she's really trapped. So after about 20 minutes, the door opens and in walks a sheriff officer. And she's like, oh, phew, he came to get me out of here. Well, the sheriff officer and this youth leader rape her for 4 hours. And then they proceed to traffic her. Now, I don't want to get in a lot of details. So these are her sixth slave owners. They tell her that God believes in slavery because the Bible talks about slaves obey your masters. And they warp her mind into thinking that there is slavery in the United States and that God agrees with slavery and that her role is to serve and obey her masters. They traffic her for years, and it gets horrible. It gets worse. So it gets worse. And I don't want y'all to run out of the room. This is her story. This is exactly what she tells me. She said, the worst part ever, and she goes, I was so messed up I couldn't speak after this. My brain was gone. She goes, they actually killed me. They were draining my blood. And I was like, what? And she goes, we went on a youth group trip to Washington, D.C., and all the other kids were out doing tourism, but I was taken into a medical facility underneath the ground, and they put me on a metal table, and they were electrocuting me and torturing me and draining my blood. Explain? Well, they had bags of blood. How many bags? A cart full of bags of blood that they were transfusing into this arm. They were electrocuting me and cutting me. And I tried to fight the nurses. I grabbed a scalpel and tried to stab them, but they kept restraining me. And in this arm, they were draining my blood. So she does not know about adrenochrome harvesting, doesn't have any idea what that is. But for 8 days, they did this to her every night. And she died, and they would resuscitate her. So, long story short, I met her after that. She'd been able to get away, but she had a handler in my city as well. A law enforcement handler who was keeping track of her. So she and I had to meet. We had a lot of cover stories for why I was meeting with her. But during one of those times, I was able to get her medically evaluated. And you got to know, this was like one of the most covert operations we ever did. We had the medical staff dress in plain clothes and sweats, meet us at a separate facility that wasn't a medical facility, bring the tools that they needed, looking completely casual, and did a medical evaluation. But they said her heart damage was consistent with electrocution. And it looked like she had been resuscitated, and she had burn marks from the electrodes on her skin. So they're like, she's telling the truth. You know, this happened. And I was like, you can see the scars on her body and all of this. So here's the part that blows me away. Boz and I worked with her and told her, because she was still being controlled every day on a burner phone by her master, the sheriff. Boz and I told her for months, I worked with her for 8 months, we can get you free, you can disappear. I read her the Constitution. I read her like, you have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You were born in the United States. No, I'm a slave. She couldn't grasp this idea that she didn't owe her life to these people who own her. And she said, I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna go back. She went back twice. We told her, you don't have to go. We can make you disappear. You can have a new life. You can come back as somebody else. You can get witness protection. It's all here for you. She went back. We heard something terrible happen to her, and we did go find her across the country. We checked on her. She's in hiding. We do check on her periodically. She's in hiding, lives in an apartment with the blinds drawn, never leaves. She's there all the time. We have surveillance come and check for her car, and it's always that way. I went and knocked on the door. She was in the dark, hiding in this apartment, and this has been this way for a couple of years that we know of. Here's the thing. We took this report. We did incredible amount of investigation. By the way, nothing in her statement was inconsistent with the truth. Everything that we found, including years later, we have new witnesses, and everything she said was spot on. We have unrelated witnesses all over the place who verified pieces of her story. I believe all of it. We turned over this intel file to people we thought would do something about it. Now, and here's what I got. Boz and I went very bravely into this sheriff's department. He and I were there. And this guy, her trafficker, is high ranking. He's head of the human trafficking task force for the sheriff department. And guess what he does? He does sting operations on brothels. What do you think he does with the girls? I mean, just think about it, you know? So we had one honest officer pull me aside, and he was very tactful. He pulled me aside and he said, I want you to know we made 3 arrests of sheriff officers who were trafficking children from this department because of your report. He goes, I just wanted you to know. And I just said, not the one. Not the one. And he's like, we can't get him. He's insulated. And he got promoted. Boz just found out he got promoted. What's his rank? He's head of the sheriff department. So this is her trafficker. And we have eyes on him, but I mean, that's just a real story. It's a real story.
What do you even say? What do you even say? So when you got somebody like Aaron sitting there looking at it, he doesn't know that reality. But he knows that MS-13 traffics in children and people. That's one of their main currencies. Tara, she's got caseworkers coming to her. They got a 12-year-old boy in diapers because he's been raped so many times on the journey to the United States. He can't even function physically. And how many people, how many caseworkers have come to you in shreds because of what they've confronted?
Wow. I cannot tell you the countless number of case managers who I've sat with as they have cried to tell me the horrors of what have happened to the children on the journey here, just the journey here. The Washington Times in Washington, D.C., put out a report stating that in my state of Virginia, which is where I'm from, that the CDC was so concerned because the children were being released from care with tuberculosis. Why? Because HHS couldn't keep them in care long enough to give them their medical needs. And in the lower third of the article, it says, but they were most concerned that many of the children had AIDS, syphilis, gonorrhea. How does that happen? How do children, small children, have these diseases? There's only one way they get them. And so the number of caseworkers that I've talked to has been enormous. And fortunately, a few of them have been brave enough to come forward. There have been some, but not enough.
That's in large part because of the work that Tara is doing, and other whistleblowers have come forward to you. But it's been how long now? And as far as I know, the only thing that's changed is that the Department of Homeland Security has moved again to remove all safeguards on sponsors.
Yes, HHS. So HHS, and again, I want to make it clear, I'm not speaking on behalf of the federal government. I'm speaking on behalf of myself as an individual, but it is the Department of Health and Human Services who runs the Office of Refugee Resettlement Unaccompanied Children program, which they admit they've lost 85,000 children in just a 2-year period. We don't know what the current numbers are, and I'm sure they don't want you to know what the current numbers are. So HHS, knowing that 85,000 children are missing, in October of last year said we're going to put in a rule change, and we're going to put in some rule changes that are going to make it just a little bit more difficult for people like Tara and the other whistleblowers to be able to come forward. We're going to make it that they can't report outside of the agency, that if they go to law enforcement, that they could lose their jobs, and a host of other things as well. And they have already started to implement part of their plan with a field guidance number 24. You can go look it up on the Department of Health and Human Services webpage. And it's created a new position called a unification specialist. Not a reunification specialist, meaning a child to someone who they have knowledge of, but a unification specialist, meaning giving a child to someone to whom they have no knowledge of, who they do not know. So I think it needs to be made very clear that the United States federal government, with your tax dollars, is paying for unification specialists to give children to people they do not know.
Some of whom are violent criminals.
Yes.
Thanks to Erin. And so this is they've published this now, the HHS has, and it's going to the Senate. Tara's been working tirelessly with others to try and get and some of our elected leaders to do something about this, because it prevents, right, anyone but the unification specialist from speaking to the sponsor. So now the caseworker that's familiar with the child, not a lot of, so the child's saying, I don't know this person. And the caseworker cannot say to the sponsor, how do you know this child? Right? And not only that, this is how evil they are. They have compartmentalized each part of the process. So now you've got a contractor whose job is literally to pick the child up from Health and Human Services and drop them off maybe at Catholic Charities or to a sponsor. And children are begging them, right?
Yes.
Begging them, please don't take me. Please, tell us about that.
Yeah, so I have to give, major credit to Mary and to America's Future for doing a video expose called Where Did the Children Go? And in Where Did the Children Go, one of the unification specialists, so at americasfuture.net, you can see this expose, all whistleblowers, and Carlos Arellano, who is a hero as well, right? One of our good friends. He has worked in this position for many years, delivering children to the sponsors. So he picks up the children and delivers them to the sponsors. And they fly them by airplane. You can see so many people have gone out and filmed these deliveries of where they're taking the children to the airports and then delivering the children on the other end. They are delivering these children in baggage claim at airports to sponsors, right, who are criminals, members of transnational criminal organizations. And he said, Tara, so many children would say to me, please, please don't make me go. I don't want to go here. I want to go home. Can I go home? And there's no way, once these children come into the custody of the United States government, that's it. They have no rights until they are then delivered to the sponsor. And then the sponsor has custody over the child. And so I think we need to think very long and hard about where our tax dollars are going, what programs are being run by the United States federal government to such a degree that the country of Guatemala has now intervened to say what's happened to the children. We are getting all of these reports of criminal activity.
Sarah Carter, an amazing journalist, has done an interview with a representative from the Guatemalan government. If you haven't seen it, it's worth looking up. And they have since now taken legal action against the state of Texas too, right?
Yeah, what's very interesting is that Guatemala is focusing on Texas. I think hopefully, they're going to be able to get some action because, the Attorney General, Ken Paxton, he cares about these kids. But isn't it curious that the Guatemalan government didn't call the Biden administration when they're the ones who are running the program? Why didn't they call Secretary Becerra, who's responsible for Health and Human Services? Why didn't they call Robin Dunn Marcos, who is the director of Office of Refugee Resettlement? Probably because every time the United States government has called them to give account at any of the congressional hearings, if you've seen them, they have no answers. They have no answers for where are the children. I mean, I just have to ask you, how do 85,000 children go missing? In 2 years, 85,000 children. So HHS runs a hotline where if a child, one of these alien children, can actually get to a phone, if they can speak one of the languages and make the call in, the data as reported by the New York Times, okay, the New York Times, I don't know about you, but I don't consider that a pretty right-leaning news organization. The New York Times reported, this is Hannah Dreier reporting, that calls to the hotline have increased 1,300% in the last 5 years. Children saying, please help me, I'm being abused, neglected, and trafficked. These are children calling for help. And clearly the United States government is not coming. The Guatemalan government is attempting to intervene. And what I'm going to say is that God is calling you. Please pray for these children. Pray for the traffickers that they will see what they're doing is evil, that they will see that they are the darkness. We need people who are going to stand up and be the voice of these children. It can be you. We're all sitting here together in this one room. Who would have guessed a year ago that we'd all be here? I can tell you I didn't think I'd be here, right? But we continue to pray, and so here we are. So somebody in here, you might not believe it, but you have the ability to make a difference in this fight. You have the ability to make a difference for the children. I can't tell you exactly what that's going to look like. I don't know. But I encourage you to pray about it and see how you can get in the fight. At America's Future, that's what we're doing. And so I thank you all for being here, to hear these stories.
So, Heidi, you've dealt a lot with internet sex crimes, right? Especially with regard to children. And what I want people to take away from here is there are sort of three pillars that have really catapulted child sexual abuse into another stratosphere. One of them is technology, and I want you to speak to that. Two is open borders. Okay, what people who are advocating for open borders and migration know at this point that they are facilitating the largest expansion of human trafficking, of slavery, modern slavery, in the history of the world, right? This is not just happening in the United States, it's happening everywhere. And then the other part of it, the best friend of all of these things is narcotics, right? So it's interesting that the same people pushing for open borders are also pushing for legalization of narcotics, right? And embedded within that are the training manuals for your children, right? And those training manuals are pornography. And when you and I spoke, one of the things that you explained to me is, I said, you mentioned grooming, and we hear grooming thrown around a lot right now. And I asked you a very simple question. What is grooming? Because I'm not sure that most people really understand what is grooming and what is the role of technology and what can and should parents be doing about that.
So grooming is, and it's done in various different ways, is when your abuser finds whichever avenue they have to get to your child, whether it's through being a step parent or a coach or just somebody who's involved that realized that mom may not have as much interaction, or mom and dad may not have as much interaction, and they'll come in and they'll start to befriend your children, and they'll start to, and I've seen it done in various different ways. Sometimes they'll come in and they'll tell the child, oh, your parents won't let you have a cell phone. Here, let me give it to you. Let's go shopping. Let's buy some clothes. Let me be the fun person. Or I've also seen them where maybe the parents are a little bit more relaxed, and the groomer will come in and say, you need to do better in school. You need to put your cell phone away. Whatever it is that, and they have an ability to figure out what it is that child needs to hear. And they'll work on your child to develop the trust so that once they're ready to start to victimize the child trusts them and has distanced themselves from the parents. If you have a good, close relationship with your child, you're involved in their life, you have those conversations, you sit down at the dinner table. I'm amazed at how many people don't sit at the dinner table, but my kids were brought up, we sit at the dinner table, and when my grown adults come home, we sit at the dinner table and talk, and we have these conversations. It's a lot harder to groom a child whose parents are involved, and that the child trusts that they can go to the parent and say, this is what's going on. One of the biggest cases I worked, when it came, I thought that's not a lot of it. I didn't have a lot of evidence, but I had a kid raised in the church who had a great relationship with his parents, and he mentioned his mom, hey, I have a girlfriend, and I met her online, and they said, no, you don't. And it's very important when your child comes to you, you can't freak out and take the phone away and take the technology away, because they're not going to tell you next time. So they engaged the child in conversation and figured out what was going on, and then they reported it. Well, it turns out that the 16-year-old that this guy thought was his girlfriend was actually an 18-year-old boy who, believe it or not, had been stalking him through church, because they had met at church. But this 18-year-old boy had reached hundreds of kids across the country pretending to be a 16-year-old girl. And it was just, and even at that age, even then, it's the grooming. It's the, what do you need? How can I help? Your parents don't understand you, or your parents are too strict, or your parents aren't strict enough. If you stayed with me, I'll take care of you. Grooming is a way to build the trust so that the victim is, just like your example, where she was willing to kill people because she had a bond with him. And you just have to be really involved with your kids, know what they're doing. Just being a friend with them on social networking is not enough. You have to know their passwords. You have to get in to see what they're doing. My kids knew I was going to read their phones. And I tell them, I'm not reading your private conversations, because there is some level of privacy that you need, but I'm going to be looking to see, are you sending pictures? Are you receiving pictures? What apps are you on? And things like that.
And I asked what apps are bad?
The list was a lot shorter years ago. Now everything. They can access your kids through everything. Through the gaming system, through Xbox, if your kid's playing, Roblox. All of those games that you think are safe. If there is a chat feature where they can talk to your child is a danger. And there's a Sextortion seminar tomorrow. I highly encourage every parent go listen to that presentation, because the amount of sextortion that's coming out, and there's organized gangs that are sextorting our kids.
Can you explain sextortion, what you mean, please?
Just briefly, because you go see it tomorrow, because you're gonna really have your eyes opened. Sextortion is when they get your child to send a picture, an inappropriate picture, and then they extort them. I'm going to share your picture with your family, or I'm going to share it with your friends or whatever. And I did a seminar the other day where they were talking about the new trend is that they're getting our kids, after they get the image, that they're talking the kids into committing suicide. And so that's on the rise. So it's important that your kids, again, it goes back to having that relationship, that conversation, so your kids trust you enough that they can come to you and say, I made a mistake. And you can say, okay, let's work through this now. Let's figure out what we need to do. Let's figure out how to protect you. But your child has to have that trust in you.
And what are the signs parents can look out for?
You're looking for things like your child won't let you see their cell phone, or they're always on their cell phone, and there's an unusual attachment to it more than before. You're looking for changes in behavior. Maybe they start to be more sexual than they were, changing in clothing. Maybe they're dressing different, hanging out with a different group of friends. Look for packages. I used to pretend to be a 13-year-old, and I can't even tell you the stuff that grown men were willing to send me, and did. I mean, we would, oh yeah, by all means, send it. You have to just, kids are hormonal. At 13, they may change. You have to know your kid and have those conversations with them. Why suddenly are you changing the way you dress? You looked great before. Why do you feel the need to look more sexual now? And if you have the good bond with your kids, at some point it will come out.
And if they don't have a phone, are they safe?
That's one of those scenarios that you have to decide as a parent.
But what about the school computer?
Oh, the school computers. I talked with a parent the other day. They did not allow their child to have a phone, and her internet is closely monitored at home. She has the school laptop, and the school guaranteed the parents that they have blocks on the laptop. There was no security set up on the laptop, and the girl was contacted and is being exploited and has actually made attempts to leave the state to go find this person that she thinks that she's in love with. And this, the school assured the parents that there was safety features set on their laptop, and there was not.
So that the reality of technology is that we tend to give our kids, put them in front of the TV or give them a phone, because that becomes the babysitter. And the reality of it is that what you need to know is you just, like someone from MS-13 or from an organized criminal gang or one of the worst kind of criminal minds in existence, a pedophile, just knocked on the door of your home and they went and sat in your child's bedroom and they're hanging out with your kid playing video games. I mean, that's what you have to see in your head. That is what is happening to them every day on TikTok, every day on YouTube, every day on Snapchat, every day on Instagram. I mean, and don't think because they're 12, 13, they don't know about OnlyFans, because they've got kids in school who are making money on a fetish site like OnlyFans, right? So, I mean, Jared, where's Jared? we have an amazing man here, Jared, who's got a panel on this tomorrow for anyone who's coming to the training. I won't talk any more about it, but it's really, Boz and Tina have a program for schools that I feel guilty every time I say that. It's not in my kids' schools, but there are many things that you can do, and I'll tell you what it starts with. Number one, being engaged. And that's just the reality with everything. Where's my time master? He quit. He just quit? Okay. Gosh, I mean, as you can tell, we could just do an hour, hours with we didn't even get into a lot of your story of what you two have meant to each other. And Aaron, just tell us very briefly, after you, because Tara, she wasn't going to go to Project Veritas. She wasn't thinking about blowing the whistle, but when she saw Aaron talking about MS-13, applying to take kids, she realized, wow, that's the other side of this that I can't see. And so you two connected through Project Veritas, and they persuaded you to tell your story. But Aaron, there was a moment for you, a hard moment for you that you described. Just tell me a little bit about that moment and why it was significant.
Of when
you were driving.
So I meet Tara, and again, like it was a year between my story and her story. It was a very, very long year. And I was driving back from America Fest after meeting Tara, and we talked for hours that weekend. And I was on the impression of like, okay, I did my thing, government fired me, cool. I'm gonna go be a garbage truck driver. That was my dream job as a kid. Like
he really means that. I interrogated him. He really means that. Seriously. That was his dream job.
And talking to Tara, I went from the idea of like, wow, this must be like 900 to 1,000 kids getting trafficked in this program, to realizing like this is in the tens of thousands. It's a very, very long 12-hour drive. And by the time I got home, I was just like, I got to do something. And that was it. I prayed really hard, prayed for a long, long time, and nothing made sense. So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to go to the library and make it make sense. So I grabbed a bunch of law books, flipped it open, and I read about international adoptions and how it's like a completely different world than unaccompanied children. And I realized like, okay, something's bad here. And I dug into it. And from there, I just kept knowing more and more and more. You saw the rule change, and it's just like, all right, you've made me, you forced me into this world now. So here we are.
And really what he's talking about is stripping away all of the protections, all of the regulations, all of the oversight. And something that is hard for some people to understand, probably not many people here, but there is a direct correlation between who is in power and the scale of what is happening and the organization of it. And this is the reality that every one of us has to confront. We're paying for it. We're paying for it. So when Boz and Tina go in to rescue somebody, they've come from across that border. They've come through Tara's hands. They've passed through his hands. And now they're going there. And I will tell you what a young Border Patrol officer said to me once. He was also in intelligence in the military before that. And he said to me once, Miss Logan, you never asked me what keeps me up at night. And I said, because I hate that question. It's a cliche. But he said, but I want you to ask me. I said, okay, what keeps you up at night? And his job was to vet the families coming across the border. This was under Trump. Of course, they did away with all the vetting after Trump. Before Biden even took office, they had already gotten away with, were already dismissing all of that. And he said, all I can think about, because I have 4 kids at home, all I can think about is, I am that child's last hope. I get this wrong. If they're lucky, they're going to find Boz and Tina one day. 2 years is the average length of time that most young children survive when they're being trafficked. So I would just tell you, this woman has walked up to cartel members and just asked them to give me that girl. Please give me that girl. And gone back and gone back. And sometimes they actually do. Miracles do happen. You know, every person on this stage is a small miracle. Matt, you opening your church. You being here tonight, these are all small miracles. And what I say to people, the only thing that really matters at the end of the day, Jim Caviezel, good friend of ours, got hammered when he talked about adrenochrome. Lost everything, his agent, his lawyer, his wife. I mean, he's slowly getting some of those things back. He's getting the most important, his family. But some of the nights when we talk, I said to him, Jim, the only thing that matters is at the end of the day, when you stand before God, And he said, he says to you, once you knew, what did you do? So this is your moment. This is your adrenochrome moment, if you like, right? This is your moment because now you know. So now you can't go back. You can't, because you're going to be in front of God, every one of us, and he's going to ask you that question. And you have to decide what answer you can live with. That's on each one of us, right? So with that, I want to hand this panel over to Tina's extraordinary husband, Boz, who is a very old friend of mine. His story is incredible because he was in the CIA and he was in Mogadishu during Black Hawk Down. And on his way out of the country, he saw a child by the side of the road. And he just knew something wasn't right. And that ended up being the first child that he rescued. And you can't imagine, right? I mean, it wasn't really an American who wanted to stay in Mogadishu after that, but he did, which gives you an idea how this man is wired. It's very different. And Boz has been doing this longer than most people. So when he speaks, I listen, and I think that you will too. Boz, will you want to come up here? He has a headset, Boone. I help him out from time to time.
All right, can you hear me okay? Thanks for having us here. We really appreciate it. I know we talked a lot about the border crisis, but I want you to be aware that we have approximately 400,000 plus American children that have been missing for a long time. So this isn't on our backyard, it's just not over there. And I'm going to say it, Mary. Here's how I feel about it. You touch a child, you get the death penalty. That's it. So sitting in this congregation tonight is an entire army of God's chosen people to do this work. If you'll only get involved and realize that God has not given you a spirit of fear. You're a force to be reckoned with in an age where Satan will flee if you'll fight. In an age where the lives of God's most precious children are hanging in the balance. In an age to which you were all born in. Now, if you wish to be great, commit to something greater than yourself. Whatever it is you intend to be great at. It must have such priority in your life that you will stop at nothing to achieve it. It must be more than just a great idea or a nice thing to do. It must be a calling. And you're going to know the difference because there'll be a gnawing in your soul that will not go away, and that what you're about to accomplish must be done at all costs, even at the expense of your own comfort, in the most extreme cases, your own life. And in that process, you're going to face obstacles. You need to know this, which I'm sure you do, Pastor. And for the untrained mind, the obstacle becomes a hardship. For the trained mind, simply something you overcome. Now, I believe it's a fair assumption that most of you here tonight are here because you care about this issue. And most of you realize that awareness, while somewhat effective, is not bringing children home. How many of you remember when we started posting the picture of missing kids on milk cartons? Remember that? So what did we do? You got a milk carton, you saw the picture, you did something about it because you bought the milk carton and you saw the picture. And every day that you poured that milk on your cereal or in your coffee, you were doing something about it. You know why? Because you were looking at the picture. But at the end of the week, what happens to that milk carton? It gets thrown in the garbage. Did a kid come home? Probably not. Did you do anything about it other than be aware? Probably not. The fact is, a child does not come home until there are boots on the ground that physically go into the evil and bring that child home. The protection of all Americans is our duty. And the hearing and the reading of this trafficking issue tonight may be useful, but if men and women rest in hearing and praying, as so many do, it's as if a tree would value itself for being watered and putting forth leaves, and yet never producing fruit. When did we allow evil to become stronger than all of us? When did we allow that to happen? And for the love of these children and our country, I want to encourage you to take your rightful place as citizens who are ready to follow in the footsteps of our founding fathers and take back your communities so that no harm ever comes to a child. Stand firm in the face of evil with a plan of action that shows the world that we will fall where we stand. We will not yield, and all who live in the darkness will be destroyed. Do not underestimate the resolve of we the people. So what could that plan of action look like for your community here to begin this process to produce fruit, to put into motion the people and the organizations that could be those boots on the ground? Number one, get trained so you understand the AO, the area of operations, whether it includes victimology, cartels, how trafficking works, signs of someone being trafficked, exercising your constitutional rights, intervention, running rescue operations, using tradecraft to stay alive, and the list goes on and on and on. Learn how to start an NGO, a non-government organization, its liabilities, and everything that we actually teach in the 6-day Fight Child Trafficking course. That course schedule can be found on recoveryofchildren.com. Number two, begin your own rescue organization or vet existing rescue organizations to see if they're qualified and capable of saving children. Build out that relationship and please maintain oversight. Number three, vet your local law enforcement to see if they're qualified and capable of saving children. Number four, create a community policing program between yourselves and law enforcement. And if they do not have the bandwidth to do that, then be prepared to run those operations legally yourself. Now, most police departments don't even receive enough training or the proper training to understand the intricacies of child sex trafficking. That's a fact. After doing this 31 plus years, that's a fact. Most of them don't even have the budget to do what we ask them to do on the streets of our cities. And given the plethora of crimes that they fight daily, they're lucky if they even see their families on a regular basis. And yes, I know they work for us, the citizens. But there has to be some give and take here. So I'm asking you to make an effort to establish a good relationship with your law enforcement partners to see how you can be of help to one another with this issue of child sex trafficking. Number five, create a call center that operates 24/7 so that you can send intelligence to those law enforcement entities who are part of the community policing program in your community or to your organization or a vetted NGO. Ladies and gentlemen, trafficking does not stop on holidays and Saturday and Sunday. Which, by the way, most departments close on Saturdays and Sundays. Number six, create a safe house system where you or a vetted NGO can take these victims and line them up for extended operations or coordinate with a service provider like the Safe House Project, who certifies and supervises a number of facilities across America for aftercare or long-term rehabilitation. Number seven, ensure you have a solid relationship with the vetted aftercare provider and that you do a deep dive into who they are, making sure they're using the right rescue protocols and do what they claim they can do. And this is an important one, particularly in our culture now. Number 8, don't brag. Stay out of the media. Focus on the mission of saving children. Remember this is not about you. This is about them. Number 9, institutionalize an anti-trafficking training and awareness programs in your elementary and high schools. We are lacking in that across America. Tina and I just recently had some discussions with a high school. They don't have time for it. They won't even make time for it. And they just had a girl trafficked from that high school. Number 10, we have learned that keeping people engaged relates to how they define success and how they achieve a sense that they can make a difference. Approach this issue by defining success as one life at a time. The impact of direct action that diverts even one person from being trafficked tends to be the deep-seated motivator for most communities. Number 11, and finally, if you're not getting the results you did not work for, don't complain. Hold your community representatives accountable for the work they've agreed to do in saving children in your community. And ladies and gentlemen, if they fail to do that, get them out of office. Remember that most everyone in local, state, and federal government work for you, the taxpayer. So don't let them forget that. And if you want to save our children in America, then you're going to have to pull the veil off of corruption, greed, and apathy. So let me ask you this. What is the life of a child worth to you? Let me ask you another question. How do you murder a child without killing them? You sexually exploit them. And they die every single day for as long as they're on this earth. Now, I realize that for many of you, this information you received tonight is a bit overwhelming. We know because we live it every single day. And if you're a person of conscience, it is possible that the size and the weight of this issue is enough to overwhelm your emotions and discourage you from even getting involved in the fight. Let me assure you that there is hope. And it's found in every step you take to acquire the knowledge and skill set to win this battle to save our children in America. It's never about walking the path the right way. I'm sorry, apologize. It's never about walking the right path, but are you walking the path the right way? So I want you to join us tomorrow for some training that will teach you how to do exactly that in a way that's confident and courageous. The greatest battles are fought not against the world, but those we fight actually against ourselves. If you make a decision not to attend tomorrow, and Mary knows I'm pretty outspoken about this, you only have yourself to blame. Whether it's your kids, your grandkids, your neighbors, your school, whatever it is. And if that be the case, then we are far greater than most other humans because it is our integrity that forces us to look inward rather than casting blame on the world that surrounds us. Now, I know there's some in the audience right now that are also saying, I might be too old to be in this fight. Do not regret getting older. It's a privilege denied to many. Complement the wisdom you have with what we have to offer you. Ladies and gentlemen, we do not rise to the level of our expectations. We fall to the level of our training. Keep in mind, there's a balance even with training. And we've had to learn this the hard way. People don't care about how much you know until they see how much you care. With that said, the training you acquire tomorrow and when you join us for the 6-day Fight Child Trafficking Equipping course is one step closer to being prepared. Showing the world you care and being the hero that these kids actually need. I like to think of it as kind of Mr. Potato training. For most of you here today, you're the same person every single day. You intervene, you take action, you do the same thing 1,000 times, and then one day, you do that one thing and it gets broadcast to the world as an act of heroism. And many other people want to be a hero, and they're looking for their 15 minutes of fame. But they're couch potatoes every day. So So when the opportunity comes, they're unprepared and they don't even respond. Those are not heroes. And yes, learning something new is a process. If you want to keep to the results, fall in love with that process. And in doing so, you might surprise yourself when you save one child. Please remember this. Saving one child is not going to change the world. But for that one child, their entire world is going to change. One man, and nobody knows this better than the Flynn family. One man or one woman with courage is a majority. Please do not forget that. Don't expect the federal government to take care of this problem for us, since the federal government, as you've heard, is part of the problem. And they do not know your community like you know your community. The problem is the problem is in your community. It's not sitting on the doorsteps of the White House. It's your backyard, and it's your responsibility to cut your own grass. Don't be disappointed with the results you don't get from the work you didn't do. And may I remind all of us once again, it is we the people, not we the government. Each of you has earned the right to decide the fate of this nation because you are the fate of this nation. Every child being trafficked is waiting to be saved. If we do not, then who will? We wake up every morning when we get a case and we say that to ourselves. If we do not, who will? Unashamedly, you are their voice. You are their shield. You lead by example, always remembering who you are, the heroes that these children need. And if you do this, you'll create a life that feels good on the inside, not just one that looks good on the outside. Please get in the fight. Thank you, and may God continue to bless all of you, and may He bless our country, the United States of America.
Ladies and gentlemen, these are your heroes. Boz, Aaron, Tara, Tina, Heidi, and the one and only Lara Logan. Go ahead and step down, guys. Go ahead. I want to take a moment to do a quick introduction of, some people call her Mary Flynn O'Neill. We just call her Mother Mary. That's right there. Mother Mary, the Executive Director of America's Future, is going to come on up here. Give her a round of applause, everybody. She's going to close us out for the night. There you go.
You are too funny. Listen, this has been quite a night, huh? How's everybody doing? You okay? Okay. So one of the things that I do every single night is I say a prayer. And the prayer is, I pray for the protection and safety of all these children. And I also pray that the Lord continues to expose these evil people. Okay? And we need to expose them, and we need to educate your communities, you people, and we need to eradicate this. This is a war. Every community is battling this. Okay, we're battling. We're a battle. A war is a war. Big picture. The battles are in your communities. Because of all this stuff going on in the border, there are more and more children, more and more supply. You're not just missing thousands and thousands of children. They're being killed. They're being slaughtered. They're slaughtering children. And it's going to ramp up because we're allowing these people to take our country over. There are 4 generations of pedophiles we're facing, and 4 generations of psychopaths. So please get in this fight. Please join us tomorrow, and you will be learning so much incredible stuff from victims, overcomers, trauma, first responders, for parents, all kinds of interesting stuff. I guarantee you'll walk away with some really good information to give yourselves and your communities these tools that you need. You really need them, okay? And Pastor, I really want to really give a hand to him and what they are doing. Because what they're doing is they're providing places and treatment. Because that's a missing link, is treatment. Because what are we going to do? We're going to have a society of criminals? This is what these people are doing. They're creating criminals out of these little kids. And perversion, they're corrupting, it talks about it in the Bible, a corrupting child, a corruption of children. And that's what many societies did. And the Bible talks about that. And that's what these people are doing. They're corrupting our children. So let's get a good night's sleep tonight. Okay, take a deep breath, get something and get some ice cream. Eat some ice cream or something that makes you feel happy, because you know what? We're living in great times, and I want to leave you with this. I'm happy to be in this fight. This makes me happy to be here. I'm happy to fight for these children, and I will do this unending for the rest of my life. And I'm here for you. All my team is here for you. We will never leave. Because we leave, we will never leave you. We will stay here and try to give you all the networking that we can do and provide this for you. This training that Boz and Tina will give you is in June. I really encourage everybody to get into that certification. And Pastor, I just want to thank you. Really, I'm not kidding you. We've been to 4 states. This is the 5th one, and this is the best so far, because he's in the fight. He's keeping the government out of his face. He's keeping the government out of your faces in your life. Push the government out of your lives. Okay? Push it out. And push it out, because the kids don't need it. That's what they're doing. Okay? So I'm going to end, and I just want to, thank you all for being here. Thank my team. They did a tremendous job. I'm so proud of you guys for what you just pulled off. It's just beautiful. I mean, it's hard, but it's really important that you listen to this. This is a reality. It's worse than you can imagine, okay? Pastor, I just want to thank you. I really do. You want to end with a prayer? Can we end with a quick prayer? We need that. We need that prayer.
Thank you, Father. We just thank you for tonight. We thank you that you've put us all in this time right now, that this is not a mistake. I thank you for these wonderful people that you brought into our lives. We're brothers and sisters. We're sons and daughters, and in your kingdom, Lord, there's power in that. And God, I just thank you for tomorrow. You not only open our eyes, but you start moving our feet and our hands to accomplish your will here on earth as it is in heaven. In Jesus' mighty name, amen.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.